Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Wondergoal, the soccer betting podcast from the Action Network. My name is Michael Leboff, and joining me today are my friends and colleagues, BJ Cunningham, coming to us from Iowa, Anthony Dabbundo. He's on assignment in England for this one, so having some fun over there, watching some Premier League stuff, but our focus will shift away from the Premier League into the Champions League for the midweek. We got two semifinal first legs, and we will start with Man City and Real Madrid. This is the Tuesday kickoff at 3 p.m. City are home favorites minus 200. Real Madrid plus 550. The draw here on the three-way money line is plus 350 to advance. City minus 245. Madrid coming back plus 195. I think this is going to be a completely different challenge for Real Madrid compared to what they just had to deal with over against PSG and then Chelsea. It's just you're playing City is just such a different beast. You're not going to see much of the ball. They're going to pass you to death. But Real Madrid should be, in theory, comfortable in those situations. But I think City also had the kind of luxury of playing Atletico Madrid before this one too, which is like a decent tune-up for Real Madrid. I'm assuming Real Madrid will sit back and relax and try to absorb as much pressure as possible, and then hope Benzema can nick them a goal or two here and get back to the Bernabeu in decent shape, which does kind of feel like a slow-moving game here. BJ, I think that's where I'd go. Maybe a bet on the draw, but I'd be looking at the unders, maybe even some like alt lines under minus 1.5 or something, because it does feel like this one is going to be lumbering towards the final whistle.
Yeah, I agree. It's interesting because I would say right now, I don't really know what to make of City. Like, I wouldn't say that they're just incredibly dominant side right now, especially after drawing with Liverpool, losing to them 3-2 in the FA Cup semifinals. And then obviously that second half over the second leg against Atletico, they were not the better side. So going up against Real Madrid, I'm very, very interested to see how Real Madrid is going to set up. Are they going to set up like they did in the first leg against PSG and try and play ultra defensive and struggle to get out and transition, because City is a fantastic pressing team and can really suffocate you inside your own final third that a way Chelsea really can't. So I'm interested to see how Real Madrid is able to react to that, because if you go back to that first leg against Chelsea, they started out pretty poor. Like, Chelsea was all over them at the beginning. They got one counterattack going forward, and they got a Benzema miracle header goal. And they were like, well, not really a miracle, but, a very nice heading goal. And they're like, oh, we can actually go out and counter. Like, we can actually get out and transition and cause some problems. And I'm wondering if they're going to be able to do that here, because, Pep, I don't know what he's talking about, an injury crisis. John Stones and Kyle Walker are out. Like, everybody's going through injuries at this point. But I just really don't know where Real Madrid's going to do with this. They were pretty lucky, honestly, to get to this point. They've scored 4.7 expected goals off of 8, and then allowed 6 off of 6.5. So essentially minus 1.8 expected goal differential over 4 matches against PSG and Chelsea. And they're in the semifinals because Karim Benzema is just on an unbelievable finishing run. But I do have some projected value on the over. I have 3.07 goals projected. So over 3 goals is at plus 110. I'm going to wait a little bit to see how the market kind of reacts. If I can get a better price on over 2.5, I think I might end up playing that, because I could see a scenario where Real Madrid just comes out and says, you know what? We have confidence because we were able to counterattack Chelsea. So why can't we just go do it to Real Madrid? But then again, I can also see a scenario where they do what Diego Simeone did in the first leg and just put 10 guys behind the ball and just try and get a result and get it back to Madrid. So it'll be interesting. I might try to play something live. I'm not really sure at this point, because I'm not really sure what kind of tactics both these managers are going to set up in.
Yeah, it's interesting. This is I think, of all the knockout round matches so far, I think this one is kind of the toughest one to call. It's line tight. I think City are deserving of their price, and exactly what Real Madrid's their path to success is, and it's just, can they keep repeating it? It's against Man City. It becomes a little bit of a trickier situation. I should note Liverpool and City are the two favorites right now to win the Champions League, both at plus 115. Real Madrid 6.5 to 1. Villarreal out there at 23 to 1. Anthony, do you see this in a similar fashion to BJ as a match that could maybe one of these teams does surprise us and takes the hands off the brakes here, and we see some goals?
I don't see a lot of goals, to be totally honest. I think this is interesting because I do believe that Real Madrid was a bit fortunate to get here, right? And I think we all agree on that. And I think they're kind of similar to PSG last year, right? So PSG last season, let's go back. They thrashed Barcelona in the round of 16. We had a lot of question marks about Barcelona, similar to how we had a lot of question marks about PSG this year. They get to the quarterfinals. They play Bayern, who are the defending champs. They get quite a bit fortunate in terms of finishing variance to get past them. But really, it was Mbappe and Neymar stealing the show, counterattacking, Bayern controlling the match, but getting beat on transition. And that's exactly what happened in the two legs that Real Madrid beat Chelsea. It was Real Madrid was not the better side necessarily, but they had the better moments. They had the best players in the best moments making big plays. And that's all you need in a Champions League knockout. Now they get to the semis. And what happened to PSG in the semis last year? Pep struggle balled it. Like they kept the ball the entire match. Seemingly they kept, two guys on Mbappe pretty much the entire match, and then suffocated Neymar out with their possession and pretty much took away all transition opportunities. And so I think City is going to do the exact same thing, at least attempt to do it in this match. Joao Cancelo is suspended. I think it's a big loss for the attack for City. I know he's a wing. He's a right back / left back. He's actually second in the Prem in progressive passes this season, behind only Trent Alexander-Arnold. So he's clearly very important to moving the ball up the pitch and getting into these big areas, into these key areas, and playing passes forward. So then they're going to be a little worse at that without him. And I'm just not sure what they're going to do defensively either. BJ mentioned the injuries. We don't know if Kyle Walker's playing. I think he's questionable. Is he out? If he doesn't play, that makes them even more conservative, I think, because Pep is going to be terrified of Vinicius. And I think they're going to play this very similarly to the first leg of the Atleti match if Walker is out, because Walker's kind of their safety. He's like a free safety in football, to put it in terms, right? He's the guy, the sweeper, as they use in soccer, and he's their pacey guy who can man mark and kind of pick up the loose pieces when teams try to play in behind their high line. And so I think he's a huge loss. Same with John Stones, who's pretty mobile, compared to some of their other center backs. So I lean toward the under. The number's not there for me either. I want to see if I can't get a better number on the 3, minus 140, 135. If it got down to like 120, 125, that's where I would go. I just don't see Real Madrid being particularly aggressive here in the first leg on the road, knowing that if they do that, they could get caught out. And really, I do think they'll get at least one shot, though, by the way. But anyway, I'm going with the under as my lean here for this match.
Yeah, this is definitely a live under game that we talk about, with these type of things, because if either side goes up, they're going to hunker down and be very good. If Man City goes up, they're going to control possession. They're going to hold the ball, and they're going to try to make it essentially like a 1-0 win. And if Real Madrid scores, they're just going to pack it in. 10 guys behind the ball, and let's just hope we can see this game out. So I guess now I'm leaning towards a live under. But yeah, it's really interesting. I honestly could see a scenario where Real Madrid says we have nothing to lose. Let's just go out there and press them and go for it. But again, it's difficult for me to see what's going to happen.
And one more thing, what happened in the semifinal, right? I did the kind of the PSG comparison. PSG went into the semifinals. They actually scored early on a set piece, Marquinhos 15th minute header. But the game was very dead. There was only 1.7 expected goals. City won at 2-1. They had two kind of fluky-ish goals. One was a free kick deflected, I believe. And then they scored from outside the box, I think Mahrez. So there were some fluky-ish goals in a game that didn't have a ton of chances. Neither team created a full expected goal. And you just see that these teams, they tighten up and they don't play nearly as open as you'd see in, a regular group stage match, or even like a round of 16. You tend to just get teams to tighten up in these bigger matches, and especially the first leg, where I think teams have a tendency to be more conservative. And we've just seen this so much from Pep, that he's going to pep this and not take any chances.
It's similar to what we talked about with the second leg of the City Atleti match. There's only so many different ways this game feels like it can go too, so it's not a bad one to take a shot on an exact score prop, right? We
back
had
to
it
the
right.
Live, the under a half again.
Yeah, we said before that match, 0-0 at 12-1 is a good bet, because it probably comes through much more often than those odds imply. And I think, if you're looking at, 1-0 City, 0-0, 1-0 Real Madrid, anything like that, those seem like the most likely outcomes here. And it would really be
18-1
surprising
here for goalless.
Yeah, it's not a bad bet at all. So that might be where I'm going, or even like a 0-0 first half, 1-0 City exact score prop, something like that. Let's go on to the next match though. Villarreal, our boys on the Yellow Submarine, traveling to Anfield. Liverpool are minus 390 in the first leg. Villarreal 11-1. The draw is plus 480. Liverpool's coming off a win over Everton, in which I think the Toffees kind of showed further flaws that Liverpool has, that City kind of exploited in a much more prolific way in their 2-2 draw. Like, if you can beat that, you can beat that Liverpool high line with pace, especially out wide, and if you can get Alexander-Arnold 1-1, you will get chances. Everton didn't take them. They didn't get a penalty. Liverpool, no penalties conceded this whole year, so go figure. But yeah, the Reds are deserving minus 500 favorites to advance, with Villarreal plus 360. But I do think this game really sets up well for a bet on our boys, Unai Emery's Yellow Submarine. They just held Bayern Munich to 2.6 expected goals across 2 legs. And what's most important of that number is they held them to 1.4 in a game that Bayern Munich needed to win at home in Bavaria, right? So that's an incredible performance across 2 legs. And it's also, sort of what I was talking about with City playing at Letty and then Real Madrid. Bayern's pretty much a poor man's Liverpool, right? Like, if you can beat Bayern, if you can play up to Bayern, like, you should be able to fancy yourself against a team like Liverpool too. And they've stepped up well. They beat Juventus in the first knockout stage, step up in competition against Bayern, handle themselves really well, step up in competition again, a big one. You're talking about one of the best 2 teams in the world right now. But 11-1. I mean, this team has shown over the past 2 years, they are just very, very good at hanging in ties, dragging better teams deep into the night. And if they can get a goal off a counter, and they do create, like they've created enough against these, both Juventus, or even going back to the group stage, they're creating chances that they're not fluking their way here. So yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any way any of us are going to be looking away from Villarreal here. So yeah, back on Unai Emery. Can he get it done again, Anthony?
Yeah, I think the market's finally like catching up to this team a little bit with the way it's moved. I mean, we talked about this before the first match against Bayern. Like, how are they plus 560? We had our question marks about Bayern, have fewer questions about Liverpool, but now they're only plus 450 against Liverpool to advance, that is. And I don't know about you guys, but I thought it was pretty clear prior to that match that Liverpool was better than Bayern. And I think it's even more clear after Bayern barely got by, or didn't get by Villarreal. And then, they've had their issues. So now we're only plus 450 here on the 2 advance line. We'll not be betting that. But so, you're finally getting the market respect for Villarreal. I think that's one thing that you have to note here, right? They were plus 2 with a little bit of juice at minus 120, I think it was, or minus 125, BJ. I know you bet it in the second leg against Bayern, up goal. Now they're only plus 1.5 at even money here. So I think the market is kind of right on this. And I have Liverpool by 1.26. So I do still show value on Villarreal, but I'm going to split my bet here, and I'm going to go more on the first half, plus a half, plus 110. And then I'm going to take a little bit just on the plus 1.5 for the game as well, because first of all, the reason I like the first half more, I think Liverpool's pressure and counter pressing ability is just better than Bayern's. They're better in transition. Thiago and Fabinho and Henderson as a midfield are much more resistant to counters than the Bayern group is. And I'm worried about subs. I think Bayern didn't really have guys off the bench. Like, they start all their good players and they don't have a ton of depth. And it's like Musiala is good, but there's not like a game-changing sub or two that Bayern can really go to when they're pushing for a goal. Liverpool, and this has been, I think, the biggest difference between them in years past, they finally have depth. Diaz may even start, but Diaz, Mane, Salah, Firmino, Jota, right? Those are like the big 5. So they can play 3 of them and then, bring 2 more on if they need them. And so they also have some midfield depth too. So I think what may happen is as Villarreal does start to wear down under the pressure on the road at Anfield, that Liverpool might be able to break away here in the second half. That would be my only fear. And that's the reason that I'm going to play more on the first half plus a half. We kind of saw it today even. I thought Rigi really changed the game against Everton. He was really impressive in his limited time. But in the first half, Liverpool didn't do squat at home. So I think you're kind of, I'm going to get a little cute. I'm going to throw, a little more on the first half than I am on the full game.
Yeah, and I think what you're going to see for Villarreal is very similar to what you saw from Everton, especially in that first half, like just a much better version of being, shithousing their way through as long as they can, putting as many guys behind the ball and finding a way out of trouble and finding outlets on the wings and hoping that, if there are those 50-50 calls, they go their way or they get a little luck. We have talked about Liverpool's been running hot defensively seemingly forever now. It just seems like this team has earned, Villarreal has earned the right to have, like, for us to believe in them. And at 11-1, like I said, I just think there's a lot of, real or, universes out there where this game is 0-0 or 1-0, Villarreal in like the 60th, 70th minute. So I'm going to take my chances here at a big number, at a team that just continues to prove us right at big numbers. So why would you stop now? BJ, what do you have?
Yeah, I love Villarreal +1 or +1.5. It's at +105 right now. To answer your question about the odds, Anthony, what's interesting is Bayern Munich was -400 at home in a game they needed to win. Liverpool opened at -400, and now they're down to -350. So the market is clearly respecting Villarreal, as they should have essentially before the tie against Bayern, because this is no fluke. Like, Villarreal 100% deserved to go through against Bayern. To echo your point, Michael, not only did they win a match or hold Bayern to 2.6 expected goals over 2 legs, especially in the second leg when Bayern needed to win, but Villarreal scored in the 8th minute and essentially held Bayern from that point on to 1 goal and 2.6 expected. Like, that's incredibly impressive performance. So now, obviously, like Anthony mentioned, Liverpool is better than Bayern Munich, but what Villarreal has the ability to do, what a lot of these other sides, I think, or smaller sides have gone up against Liverpool and failed, is they have the tactical flexibility to play the way they did in the first leg against Bayern, where they come out, they press them, they say, you know what, we're taking the game right to you. And they also have the ability, like they did in the second leg, to sit back in a 4-4-2, play 2 low blocks, and play incredibly defensive. So I have no doubt that Unai Emery is going to be able to adjust on the fly to whatever Liverpool is type doing, because early on in the Premier League season, Liverpool did struggle against teams that pressed them at a high rate. So Villarreal comes and he says, you know what, we got nothing to lose, we're taking it right to you. There's a chance that Liverpool could essentially crumble under that pressure. So Villarreal's ability to also play through pressure was really evident against Bayern Munich in that first leg. They had so many counterattacking opportunities. We said it when we talked about it last time, that they could have won like 4-5-0 given the opportunities they had on the counter. Well, Bayern and Liverpool play very similar styles with that high line. And Liverpool is going to be way more aggressive than essentially a team like if they were going to play Manchester City. I would be a little more hesitant on Villarreal. But Villarreal is an unbelievable counterattacking team that can really cause Liverpool some problems. So, and really we've talked about how Liverpool can rotate their squad, but this is their 9th match in 25 days. Like, at some point, it has to kind of catch up with them. And you saw it kind of today. They were pretty sluggish in the first half against Everton. Villarreal, La Liga was off this weekend for the Copa del Rey final. So Villarreal is at 8 days of rest for this match. So they will be much more fresh than Liverpool. So in terms of spots, this is fantastic for Villarreal. So I am on them +1.5 at +105. I have Liverpool spread projected around -1.1. So I'm a little lower on Liverpool than Anthony is, but either way, there's definitely value on Villarreal in this leg. And I might take a shot on 11-1 as well, Michael, because I just love this team so much. And at some point, Liverpool, I know they're pretty much one of the best teams in the world, but at some point, this run of games of high pressure, high stakes over weeks and weeks and weeks, it's going to catch up with you at some point. And what better spot against an incredible counterattacking team like Villarreal?
And
I feel like we're going to be saying that when they win the Champions League. It's like, oh, Liverpool's going to be gassed at some point, and then they win the Champions League. But I'll leave with one stat, and it's people look at shots and they're like, oh, Bayern 24 shots, Villarreal 4 shots, second leg, 1.5 expected goals on 24 shots is hilariously bad shot quality. So it's just another reason we use expected goals.
And people were complaining about Everton's first half today, but they held Liverpool to 0.12 expected goals on like 4 or 5 shots. So it's in a weird way they did really show that this strategy can work. It's just you need better players to pull it off over 90 minutes. I can already hear Jurgen Klopp complaining about Villarreal getting the weekend off before this while they continue to have to play.
I think Danjuma might have a big game. That's my prediction.
But
I know Danjuma.
And one other point I want to make is in a weird way, this obviously of the 4 teams remaining, the other 3 teams, Madrid, City, Liverpool, like they would have said Villarreal. Everyone would say Villarreal. That's probably the easiest path to the final. But in a weird way, Villarreal, like BJ was mentioning, like this is probably their best chance of the teams left, because City and I guess Madrid would be the easier route, but like those 2 teams would be more than happy to kind of they won't play at that kind of high risk, high reward style that Liverpool does, that Villarreal can take advantage of. So yeah, really interesting one. And it just is not as straightforward, I don't think, as this line. I think, well, like you guys were saying, like the market clearly respects Unai Emery's side, as they should, especially in these tournaments.
Finally.
Over the past 2 years, right? Like we've been beating this drum too, that they won the Europa League last year. They beat Arsenal, they beat Man United in semifinal and then a final. This is a small club too. Like they took care of business there, and now they've beaten Juventus and Bayern Munich. They got out of a group that had Atalanta, and United. Like this has been a really impressive run, and Unai Emery has shown that he can handle these situations. So there are enough signals here that I think a bet on Villarreal is well worth it, especially at the numbers, even if the market is catching on. All right, let's move to the Europa League. Also in the semifinals, both of these matches though will take place on the same day, Thursday, 3 p.m. Eastern time. West Ham -110 at home, hosting Frankfurt out of the Bundesliga. The draw here is +250. Frankfurt been largely mediocre in domestically this season. 10, 11 win, draw, loss, a -2 goal differential, 42 scored, 44 against, but a -11 expected goal differential, nearly 39 created and 50 allowed. However, they just got by Barcelona, who were red hot in the Europa League quarterfinals. So it's tough. I mean, and we've talked about this West Ham team has looked shaky. They win one, they lose one, they draw one. They've just been up and down. And I think a lot of it is because they're basically putting all their eggs into this basket and focusing on the Europa League, coming off the wins over Lyon across the 2 legs. So I think this game, like it looks right. I would be interested in maybe an over here, because I think both of these defenses are pretty susceptible to giving up big chances. BJ, what do you have here?
Yeah, I like the over as well. I had it in my notes. It was like very interesting that we have basically 2 teams that have seemingly fallen off a cliff in their domestic leagues, but somehow got through against, like, Lyon was by far a better team than West Ham at that given juncture. And obviously Barcelona was in red hot form. But, West Ham, we've talked about it. They're in an injury crisis. I mean, Kurt Zouma and Issa Diop are still out. Craig Dawson is going to be, they basically had to play a back 3 today against Chelsea. And then Craig Dawson got a red card, so he's going to be out against Arsenal. I really have no idea what they're going to do in that match, but we'll talk about that next week. But what it does is it brings West Ham out of their typical 4-2-3-1 that they've had so much success in. So it's very difficult for me to see how they're not going to concede quite a bit here to Frankfurt. I mean, even in the quarterfinals against Lyon, they allowed 1 goal over the 2 legs, but Lyon created 3.7. So they really weren't that good defensively. And Frankfurt, I mean, they were good offensively against a Barcelona team that was unbelievable, like had an unbelievable defensive run under Xavi, and they created 3.1 over those 2 legs. But, in the Bundesliga, they haven't been that great. Like you mentioned, like 1.3 expected goals per match, but throughout the Europa League, they're averaging around 1.6 expected goals per match. So they've obviously been much better in these type of competitions. But I mean, defensively in the Bundesliga this year, they are 15th in big scoring chances allowed. They're conceding 1.74 per match. And West Ham offensively, they haven't been great, like we've mentioned, since the calendar turned to 2022, but they have done a good job all season at creating big scoring chances. They average about 1.3 per match. But really today against Chelsea, they rested Michael Antonio, they rested Jared Bowen, and then Declan Rice for most of the match. So I have 2.95 goals projected for this match. So over 2 goals at even money, I think is a decent price for two defenses that are very, very shaky right now.
Yeah, I'm curious for you, Anthony, because I feel like you like to bet against both of these teams in their domestic leagues quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's a mid-off, for lack of a better term. The League's Europa League semifinals are pretty underwhelming when you consider some of the matchups we've had in past years, and just the general quality of the Conference League ones are actually far more enticing to me. But these are two pretty overrated teams that I've been kind of fading often. Not as much Frankfurt, because I think the market's pretty wrong or pretty right on them, and that they're, just I've got them 10th, I think, in the Bundesliga, and they are 10th, and they've kind of played that way for most of the season. But West Ham has finally come down to earth. I mean, it's been a slow, progressive slide into the mud. And today, I didn't get a chance to watch the match, but 25 shots for Chelsea, 2.5 expected goals. It was a pretty concerning performance. And I understand the flat spot idea. Like, they just have a look ahead to this match of their season, biggest West Ham match in many, many years on Thursday. Okay, fine, you can be flat, but they got what looks like trucked. So two teams I'm looking to play against. So that doesn't make me love either side generally. And my number's relatively close. I make West Ham right around the number, actually, plus 110. So I lean toward Frankfurt just because I generally like the dog in the situation in the first leg on the road. And we talked about Lyon, 3.5, 3.7 expected goals created over 2 legs. West Ham's defense was getting very, very fortunate both legs. I think they hit the post twice in the first leg, if I'm recalling correctly. Lyon did in West Ham. They were the much better side. There was a red card involved, but Lyon really deserved more from that. So I would lean toward Frankfurt on the road here, but don't really love either side.
The other semifinal features RB Leipzig, fresh off of a loss to Union Berlin over the weekend, which we were all on. They're minus 260 hosting Rangers out of Scotland, plus 700. The draw here is plus 380. It's an interesting matchup because we've been talking about Leipzig overperforming relative to their data for a long time. Like, they've been running hot offensively by 15 goals or so. It finally caught up to them a little bit in the loss to Union Berlin. They still scored more goals than their XG, right? 0.6 created, 1 scored. They scored on their first shot, of course. But then you look at Rangers. It's kind of hard to judge Scottish teams just because the division they play in is so top heavy, right? You usually get Rangers, Celtic, and then one of Hearts or Aberdeen, whoever like kind of pops this year. I think it's Hearts and Dundee like have been decent in terms of domestic form. So, and the data is just not that good because they're playing against bad teams, and then the league splits, and it's a completely different animal than a lot of these other leagues. So it's hard to kind of just judge how good this Rangers team is, and they're clearly going to be stepping up in competition on the road against Leipzig. Leipzig's minus 375 to advance, Rangers plus 285. Just because of the overperformance, like, I don't hate a bet on Rangers at 7-1, but it does seem like Leipzig are probably they're deserving of these prices considering the opposition. And BJ, what do you think?
I think chaos is written all over this entire tie. The good news about it, you mentioned with the data with Scotland. The good news is we have 2 legs of Rangers playing Dortmund in the Europa League knockout playoffs, I believe is what they're called. And that was just complete chaos. I believe there were 10 goals over the 2 matches, 8.2 expected goals total for those. And I understand that Leipzig has overperformed offensively, but Dortmund and Leipzig play very, very similar up-tempo type styles. And what I saw from Rangers over those 2 legs is they are not afraid at all to get out on the counter and send guys forward because, we've talked about it all the time, but teams like this who play in lower leagues where they dominate possession all the time and they have to come to these European competitions and play against sides who are going to dominate possession there. I mean, Rangers throughout this entire, they've got it a pretty easy path. Let's be honest. That once they got by Dortmund, they got to play Red Star Belgrade, and then they got Braga out of Portugal. So I am expecting chaos. I'm expecting an over here. I love over 2.5 goals at minus 2.5, given Rangers up-tempo style, their ability to counterattack, and seemingly the game just to be incredibly open. I mean, throughout the Europa League, Rangers matches have been incredibly open. 8.2 over 2 legs against Dortmund, 6.5 over 2 legs against Red Star Belgrade. And then I understand there were 2 red cards in there and there was some extra time. So you have to put this little caveat, but they created 6.1 expected goals against Braga in the second leg, which is, I think, maybe the biggest expected goal output I've seen this season. Somebody might have to correct me on that one, but I have a little over 3.5 goals projected for this match. So over 2.5 at minus 135, I think is a really, really good price for a match that is going to be incredibly open. And honestly, I do not mind a bet on Rangers at all, because if they play similarly, because they can set up similarly to how Union Berlin did this past weekend, there is no doubt in my mind that they can torch RB Leipzig on the counter, because they have struggled on the counter at times this season, especially early on. And they haven't really played a team that's going to punish them on the counter like a team like Rangers is going to be able to do. I mean, Atalanta was definitely the better side against them in the last, first leg, and then RB Leipzig, kind of took over in that second leg. But yeah, I think Rangers is definitely live to advance here and get to the final. Given the RB Leipzig overperformance and the negative aggression that we saw against Union Berlin, I think it's going to continue to come here in this first leg.
Anthony, you're going a different route here. You've got a big picture view of Leipzig, as big picture as you can get when it's the semifinals.
Yeah, I mean, the number's not great in terms of we're getting a big number on Leipzig to win the Europa League, but I am stunned it's plus 120. I think, I've talked about, they're minus 370, right, to get to the final, so which is to advance over 2 legs. And to be honest, from a matchup perspective, Rangers scares me about as much as West Ham and Eintracht Frankfurt do in terms of their one, that's a very difficult road environment. So the fact that we get it over 2 legs, I like, because I think that's the one that has higher variance, because we're expecting, a lot of back and forth in that match. So I like that I get the better team over 2 legs in that situation. In a 1-legged final against Eintracht Frankfurt, I mean, they played Frankfurt twice this year. Frankfurt stole 2 draws. None of those matches were competitive. I believe it was 4.5 to 0.3 in expected goals over 2 matches at and home against Frankfurt. So if it's Frankfurt, I feel really good about our plus 120. And even against West Ham, a team that has been clearly sliding and a team that now has injuries, I think Leipzig is by far the best team left in the tournament, and they're going to win the tournament. So at plus 120, I love them to win Europa League. I'm not betting this match, though. I think it's, like BJ said, I would lean toward the over, but I think I'm just going to take the plus 120 to win this whole tournament. And hopefully we don't get soccered in the final, I think.
Let's real quick, Europa Conference League semifinals as well. Feyenoord taking on Marseille, and then Leicester City and Roma in a really interesting one. I think that if you asked UEFA when they came up with this new competition for whatever reason, if they could pick a couple of teams that they'd want to meet in this situation, I think Leicester City and Roma would probably be at the top of their list, because they're biggish clubs, and it will mean something to Leicester for sure, and Roma, I guess. Mourinho gets to talk about a trophy he won. If they do, what do you guys have here? We'll start with you, BJ, real quick.
Yeah, I mean, how do you not love Roma in this spot? I mean, Leicester is a slight favorite at home. Crazy. I do not know how they are favorites at home right now. I mean, I understand that Jose Mourinho's been just lost to Inter this past weekend, but Roma was 11 matches unbeaten before that with a plus 12.8 expected goal differential over that run. Since the beginning of March, we've talked about it. Leicester plus 2 actual goal differential, minus 5.4 expected goal differential. Now, they were impressive in the second leg against PSV with their backs against the wall. They got 2 late goals, created about 2.7 expected. So feather in their cap for that. But with that being said, overall for the season, Leicester has a minus 11.2 expected goal differential. Roma's at plus 22. That is very, very wide gap that the competition level from the Premier League to Serie A cannot make up. I mean, Leicester defensively is 16th in the Premier League in non-penalty expected goals and 18th in shots allowed per 90. Roma is third in Italy in both those categories. And I just don't see how Leicester is a favorite here. So I love Roma. It's a bit pricey. Roma plus half a goal is minus 150 right now. You could play them on the money line. I do believe that they're going to be able to just. I just don't understand how Leicester is a favorite in this tie.
Anthony, you're singing a similar tune here.
Yeah, I make Roma minus 110 on the draw no bet. So I've got them as a favorite, not by a ton, but on the road here, of course, in the first leg, and I took them plus a quarter goal at minus 110. So I think I'm getting a pretty good number there, and what I think should really be pretty close to a toss up. I'm getting the quarter goal. I'm going to take it. I think this match may well end in a draw, and then Roma will go home and win. I'm still looking for prices on the two advanced lines. I have not been able to find any yet. I'm hoping as we get closer to Thursday that we're going to get those posted. I'm going to be playing Roma to advance. Don't know the number, of course, but I think based on the lines that we have for the first match, I can pretty much tell that we're going to get a good Roma to advance number. So I think they should be solid favorites to advance over two legs, over 60%, in my opinion. And, they were the second best team coming into this competition behind Spurs. 538 still thinks they are. I have no reason to believe they're not the second best and the best team remaining in this field. So I'm taking Roma. And again, the other match, we've talked about Marseille, and BJ hates them, and I kind of like them for, fun reasons. And I think they're a lot of fun, but in terms of, from a regression point of view, I like Feyenoord's matchup here. I don't love them in the first leg, but I'm going to be looking for them to advance too. I think we're going to get a dog price on Feyenoord to advance. Marseille, one of the slowest build-up teams in all of Europe. 1.19 direct speed from the analysts. That's the slowest in all of France. Second most passes per sequence. Their expected goals, they're only like fifth or sixth in France, though, in terms of actual quality this season. They're fifth in expected goals allowed from open play, only seventh from expected goals for. As we're recording this, they've taken 2 shots in the first half at Reims. So they're really not an impressive attack for me. And it really comes down to a lot of Payet magic to overcome that. And he can do that. But I think Feyenoord matches up pretty well with their ability to counterattack on the road here in the second leg. So I'm going to be looking to bet them in the second leg straight up, but I also will be looking to bet Feyenoord to advance. Again, we don't have a number. I haven't been able to find a number yet, but I like Feyenoord.
All right, and there is a Premier League match over the midweek. It's a Thursday one, and it's hilarious. It's Man United plus 225 against Chelsea plus 120. The draw here is plus 260. I mean, we say it every week. Like, what number would you need to bet Man United in this match, or what they're kind of putting out there? Not in terms of their lineup, but just in terms of their effort and their complete lack of cohesion, and that's kind of the just stuff that's swirling around this club right now. It's tough to imagine. Chelsea should be fully up for this one. You're always up for a Man United match, and they can basically make sure it's 100% done and dusted that they finish in the top 4 with 3 points here. They're coming off a win over West Ham on the weekend, a late winner from Christian Pulisic after Jorginho with one of the worst penalties ever. Meanwhile, Man United, they got thrashed by BJ's Arsenal after being thrashed by Liverpool, after being a lucky winner against Norwich, and after losing to Everton. So what a run here from Ralph Rangnick's Manchester United. I think that the number is crazy, like across the board, unplayable. It's a pretty easy one for me to pass on. It's the only game, which sucks, but so you always want to play those island games, but I got nothing in terms of betting standpoint for United and Chelsea. BJ, what do you have?
Yeah, I'm probably going to end up passing as well. I have Chelsea projected at plus 112 and the over-under at 2.75. So not much value on me. The overs at minus 120, price at minus 125. So easy pass to me. I mean, United, you have to question motivation with them right now. They're clearly out of the top 4. They could care less if they're in the Europa Conference League or the Europa League. You have a new manager coming in. Ronaldo, once again, essentially almost saved them, with the great move in that first one, and then, a bad penalty by Bruno Fernandes. But once Arsenal went up 2-0, I thought United played a little bit more inspired. It's just they came out very, very flat. So you could see another scenario like that here. I think this is a fun game to potentially play live, because if United scores first, I think I'll probably be jumping in on Chelsea, because if you remember the last time these two teams met, I believe it was in the middle, either the end of the Ole Gunnar Solskjaer era or just after it.
Just after.
Michael Carrick was in charge. But
Michael Carrick era when United was good this season.
When United basically just packed it in for 90 minutes and they got one breakaway that they put away and they tied 1-1. So
I think Jorginho slipped, right?
Or something he slipped.
They got a free.
It was
somebody fell.
It was off a corner. They United cleared it. Somebody slipped, and I think it was Sancho who got the breakaway.
Sancho, 1-1.
So, I mean, we could see a similar scenario like that. I think this is just a fun live betting game, especially if United goes up, because I don't know where, with Chelsea winning today, I mean, they're pretty much secure, and they were secure before today, but winning today really clinched third place for them. So you have to question motivation with them as well. So, I mean, you get up for, like you said, Michael, you get up for a match against one of the big six, but I agree with you. This is an easy pass for me.
Anthony, anything here before we move on to our favorite bet for the week?
Yeah, I don't have much either. BJ said plus 112. I just looked at mine, plus 108. So I show, the tiniest value on the Blues on the road. I don't hate the idea of fading United again. If you want to have fun with this, I mean, I'll be watching the Conference League, but because when you can watch the Europa Conference League, why would you watch the Prem? But
yeah, watch Rangers. Watch Rangers in Leipzig.
Leipzig. I mean, Galasso's show, I think, is going to Paramount Plus Galasso's show is going to be doing all 4 matches simultaneously. So that will be where I will be tuned in on Thursday. But, from this match point of view, I think if you want to bet Chelsea, you can look toward alt lines, because they did, play pretty impressively today. And I do think that they have a chance to kind of make a statement here and rub some dirt on Man United, and clearly Liverpool and Arsenal look to do the same. Although, United really did have some good moments against Arsenal. I thought I was encouraged by that, but you think if they're going to give a good effort, it's going to come at home. So that is another indicator maybe you're looking towards. But at this point in the year, I have no interest in backing Manchester United. Of course, I said that about Gladbach. They covered this weekend, but
we'll close this one out with our favorite bets for this week. Champions League, Europa League, all over the place. Should be a fun week. BJ, Anthony, I think this is the first time since we started the show that all three of us are on the same side for our best bet. So we'll let you start it off, BJ.
Yep. Villarreal plus 1.5 at plus 105. I mean, this is, like we've already mentioned, it is no fluke that Villarreal is here. Held Bayern to 2.6 expected goals over 2 legs when they actually went up in the first leg in the 8th minute. So they've essentially held one of the best offenses in the world to a very, very low amount over those 2 legs. The ability of Villarreal to play through pressure, to go out on the counterattack is going to be very, very crucial in this matchup against a Liverpool side that can really suffocate you if you're not able to play through that kind of pressure. And they showed in the first leg against Bayern that they have the ability to get out and counterattack and put pressure on Liverpool's high line. I mean, Liverpool, the spot for them is not that great. This is their 9th match in 25 days of just constant high pressure, playing United, playing in a Merseyside derby against Everton, twice against Manchester City. Villarreal has had 8 days of rest. La Liga was off this weekend, so they will be fresh and ready for this one. They can set up incredibly defensive and play 2 low blocks. They can come out, they can put pressure on you and cause a lot of problems. So, from a projection standpoint, I have Liverpool spread projected at minus 1.06. So I love the value on Villarreal plus 1.5 at plus 105.
Sticking with the same team, going a different direction. 11-1 Villarreal on the money line at Anfield. Like we're saying, their impressive Champions League run continued with a shocking result against Bayern, but it was only shocking if you haven't been paying attention or if you haven't been listening to the show. That result was coming, especially after an impressive 2-leg win over Juventus. So this team has already defeated Arsenal, Man United, Juventus, and Bayern Munich in the past 2 years in European champion or Europa League or Champions League knockout ties. So why not Liverpool? Villarreal's already paid off for us at big numbers. Not going to stop. I'm not going to start downing them now. No matter the team. And as BJ said, at some point, all these games should catch up to the Reds. And It could happen on Wednesday night against a team that is suited to play in this time of environment. Anthony, what about you?
We found 3 different ways to back Villarreal here because BJ's got the spread. You've got the money line. I'm going to take the first half spread plus a half plus 110. I think Villarreal is finally getting priced correctly in the market in terms of this match. When you compare their numbers when they played Bayern 3 weeks ago to when they're playing now against Liverpool, they're being priced a little bit shorter against Liverpool, who is clearly a better team. So the market's clearly starting to catch up on the Yellow Submarine. And I do worry about Liverpool depth. That's the main reason I'm not playing the full game here. I think Liverpool has the chance to make a lot of high impact subs and bring guys off the bench to really change the game. We saw that with Origi today against Everton, and we've seen that in the past. Even the games against Inter Milan, the first leg against Inter Milan, the first leg against Benfica, when they went to the subs is when they really started to separate a little bit and create more chances against the tired first 11 of the opponent. And I think that could happen here. It's a little bit of a concern for me. So I'm going to take Villarreal in the first half to have a great defensive game plan, to park the bus and to effectively keep Liverpool out of transition here and keep them away from a goal, hopefully in the first half, or maybe Villarreal even sneaks one and we get the plus a half in that way.
All right. That'll do it for a very yellow submarine episode of Wondergoal. For PJ Cunningham and Anthony Dabbundo, I'm Michael Leboff, wishing you with the best of luck with your soccer bets, and we all live on a yellow submarine.